Well, I mean, interestingly, Tillerson would soon go on to conclude that Donald Trump was a total effing moron. So whatever happened between Rubio and Tillerson in that hearing, it was, I think, months that we learned that what Tillerson really thought of Donald Trump while he was serving as his Secretary of State. I want to ask you, Barry McCaffrey, what happens if Trump continues down this road and not a single member of Trump's cabinet who once saw Putin the way all of you do speaks up or resigns in protest, if not a single Republican finds their spine and does anything to stop? I mean, I think Bob Corker, as a Republican senator, sought to limit a president's nuclear powers when he saw Trump flirting with Vladimir Putin in the first term. What happens if nobody has the courage to stand by what they said 3 days ago about Vladimir Putin and America continues down this path?
Well, unfortunately, my own view is the damage is done. It's now irrevocable. There's not a shred of rational argument among European powers to trust the United States' commitment to NATO and Article 5. NATO is a deterrent organization. It kept the peace for 4 generations. I think that's over. So I think right now there's a scramble among all the European countries, to include the Finns and the Swedes and others who are borderline states, the Baltic states, Poland, et cetera, that they think they're under the gun. I would be unsurprised if in private audience they haven't basically committed themselves to wiping out any U.S. assurances. Fortunately, both the French and the Brits have a nuclear capability. Otherwise, the nuclear assurance that the U.S. Grants to our allies in Europe would be gone also. And by the way, Nicole, I think you have to take into account, look, over the last few weeks, we've heard coercion of Canada become a 51st state, an embarrassment, a ludicrous proposition. We might seize Greenland militarily from Denmark, a NATO ally. And why would we do that? We're already there on a NATO base. Seize the Panama Canal in violation of a U.S. treaty, use military power against Mexican cartels. There is a series of sort of psychobabble announcements coming out of the U.S. government that has the global leadership confounded. But they think we're gone, I think, in Europe for the Trump administration period.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it increases the likelihood of war. Right now, we've got Russian special operations troops conducting murder and sabotage operations in Western Europe, dredging up cables, cutting communications. They're at a very low level of war against the Europeans. And so Trump's withdrawal of a NATO assurance puts the second great economic power in the globe, the European Union, at fundamental risk. These are adverse situations to U.S. national security and our own economic well-being.
Ambassador McFaul, what do people think of what happened to us? I mean, anyone that's been to Normandy and sees that at that moment of choosing, what America did was storm the beaches to stand with our allies. I mean, the parallel here is to maybe show up on the shores and say, no, we'll go with Hitler. I mean, what do they think about the switching of sides with the turning of who occupies the Oval Office?
Well, again, I just got back from Munich and the entire place was in shock. Could not believe the speech that the vice president gave. And it feels like, you know, Nicole, you and I have talked many times on this show, for many years, about the fight between autocrats and Democrats. And we've talked about how it's not just between countries, it's within countries. And there were many people in Munich saying, are the Americans now switching sides? And it's hard to look at what President Trump has said, and it's hard to look at what his team has said about all the concessions we're making to the autocrat Putin to not worry about that. But I'm not as pessimistic as the General McCaffrey, because We are not a dictatorship ourselves. Maybe we have people that have those proclivities. We are a democracy. Not everybody agrees with what Trump said about Zelensky or Putin. We are still in this fight, and we need to fight because this is not just about values. It's about our long-term national interests. The United States is better being a part of NATO than being outside of it. The United States is better off being part of the democratic world than part of the autocratic world. And we still should fight for these things to stop and limit the damage that President Trump and his team is doing right now.
Michael Crowley, I believe the latest reporting has Trump at an event for the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund in the Miami area. He's at the table. His team is at the table in Saudi Arabia with Putin's team. He is lying about President Zelensky on social media. Again, nobody has quit. No Republicans have threatened to go down to the White House and tell Trump that aligning America with Russia is a bad idea that we've learned about. And if you've learned about that, please correct me. What is the friction slowing down the scenario Barry McCaffrey articulates and the hope Ambassador McFaul maintains?
I don't see a lot of friction, Nicole. It's very different than in the first term. You know, in the first term, you had a cadre of very traditional foreign policy professionals around the president and members of Congress who were pushing back on these kinds of things. And although there are some figures like that around him now, including the National Security Advisor Waltz and Marco Rubio, who are somewhat more conventional and traditional, I just don't see evidence that they are looking to battle him internally the way people in the first term, like Jim Mattis or Rex Tillerson during his brief tenure, or John Kelly, H.R. McMaster, people like that, particularly when it came to Russia. And, you know, I think that people had to know going in, this was more or less what we expected President Trump to do. I mean, the rhetoric is surprising. And in particular, the vitriol that's starting to emerge towards Zelensky is new. He was mildly critical of Zelensky over the past couple of years, but calling him a dictator, talking this way is surprising. But having said that, I think that people who signed up for Trump could not have been under any illusion that he was not going to quickly try to establish a relationship with Vladimir Putin and quite likely throw Ukraine under the bus in any peace talks. And by the way, one other point here, Nicole, you know, people can believe whatever they want about Trump's relationship with Putin going back years and what happened in the 2016 election and all of that. But the political reality is that the dossier, the Mueller investigation, you know, Russiagate, as it came to be known, it is sort of passed by us, and President Trump is not facing questions every day about, you know, whether there was a collusion to get him elected and whether he's a Russian agent. And I think also that kind of general political climate and probably the reality that a lot of Americans didn't end up believing a lot of those things just gives him a lot more freedom of action when it comes to Russia. So I would not be holding my breath for some dramatic intervention in the near term.